Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Eric. How are you?
I am doing fantastic.
Hopefully, I'm doing this correctly. It's been a while since I've been here.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm sure you'll get right back into the swing of things.
I will. And speaking of swing, I guess that's a great way to introduce our guest.
It is. We have a very musical guest who's had a lot of interesting stories and a great track record going through multiple careers, actually. Like to introduce everybody to Kim Collins. Kim is a flautist who has played with the Hartford Symphony. We've had folks from the Hartford Symphony here before. She has performed with the rock group Kansas, among others, and now she is working at the Connecticut River Valley Chamber, and we are going to talk to her about all of that. So, Kim, welcome.
Thank you very much, Eric and Chip. It's great to be here.
We're glad to have you. So, let's start with your musical career. How did you get started?
Okay, how did I get started? Well, all right. I don't think I really intended for any of this to happen when I was young enough at the age that they would start introducing instruments. I had zero interest at all. So I did not begin when everybody else did. Well, what happened is there were some mighty cute guys playing the saxophone in the band. So at one point, I asked my mom if I could play, and she said, "Sure, you can play an instrument." And I said, "I want to play the saxophone." And she looked at there were four of us. I had three other siblings, and she looked at the rental sheet and the purchase sheet, and she said, "That one costs too much. Pick the flute or the clarinet." And I said, "Well, no, thank you. Then I don't want to play." And she said, "Hey, wait a minute now. You made a commitment to this and you are going to play something. So pick one of these, flute or clarinet." And I picked the flute, and it just took off like a shot from there.
The rest is his. So it started as a hopefully social experience, is what you're saying.
that, that was my intention.
Yeah, I can understand what your mother was talking about. I remember that rental sheet from getting a sax for my son. And yeah, but it tends to rack up.
It does.
So you started with the flute. Did you meet any boys there?
Well, not there in the middle school band, but yeah, one of my boyfriends in high school band, and then of course when I went to music school, that's where I met my husband, who was a percussionist. So it worked out for me.
There you go. Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Obviously, growing up with music all around you is just so wonderful. And as we were talking about before, I got to watch both of my sons' journeys from grade school through both being in the music professional field right now. And I mean, there's nothing like it having music in your life. So for you being able to perform and to teach and to mentor people and so on and so forth, I'm sure it's been so rewarding to you in so many ways.
Yeah, it has been really great. It's been amazing. I think what is the most important to me and the most amazing part of it is that you get to touch other people. So for me as a mentor, being able to empower somebody else to make a positive change in their life is a really important part of it. And it almost becomes inconsequential that it's music. It doesn't matter that it's the instrument. I kind of feel like I'm teaching life, and it's via the instrument. So, I get to make some really great changes and help people just kind of think about their own selves and the way that they operate, and make corrections and modifications and become better. And then, of course, as a performer, It means more to me when I know that I've touched somebody, that I get some feedback, that somebody says that it meant something to them or they enjoyed it.
No, and obviously I was joking a little bit about the social experience part of the thing, but one of the most wonderful things about music, especially when you're new in schools and so on and so forth, is it pulls that group of kids together who are playing together, whether it's being the orchestra or lessons or whatever, and all of a sudden you have something in common to build on. So you automatically are developing a group of friends, a social group, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure that you have a lot of people who you've known literally for your whole life because of through that too.
That is true. Definitely.
So how did you make that transition from I'm going to play the flute to meet some boys to going to music school?
I just really think that for me, the flute became an outlet. It became a really important part of like my own self-soothing, and I was good at it, and it meant so much to me that I couldn't stop. I was a really great student. I was at the top of my class. Had a lot of other choices of things that I could do, but I remember saying to my mom, the only thing I think I really want to do is play the flute. And that hadn't really occurred to my parents that we could do that, but we decided to go for it and see what happened. And I've been very, very fortunate that it did work out for me. That's not the case for everybody.
See, that's great. And, what I hope our listeners take away from this is that you discovered this passion completely by accident. So, you never know where new experiences are going to take you.
That is really true. You just don't know.
So I mentioned that you've played with the Hartford Symphony, which, let's face it, when people think of flutes, most people think symphonic music, classical, but you also played with a number of bands, Kansas among them. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with both of those organizations. I remember talking to you about this and being absolutely surprised because the only rock and roll flautist I ever knew of was with Jethro Tull.
Ian Anderson. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention that I am not a member of the Hartford Symphony. I have performed with them. The symphony that I have spent the most time with is the Springfield Symphony up in Massachusetts. And I also play with the New Haven Symphony and the Waterbury Symphony. So those are the places that I play. How I got started with that, I think it really just happened in music school. Actually, well, my first gigs were in high school, but there was a contractor who came to an orchestra concert, and he heard me play, and he found my contact information, and he said, "I'd like to hire you." And I started freelancing when I was still in school. So that's how that got started. I was, once again, I just have to keep reflecting on how fortunate I have been that things lined up the way that they did, because that happened by itself. And then what happened following that was organic, right? So you show up someplace, you do a good job, you make good connections, and then you get more work. So
yeah, I'm curious, being an old rocker. I actually saw Jethro Tull play in the Hartford Civic Center. I'm guessing around 1980. It was a long, long time ago. But the band Kansas and Carry On and all those things, that was a wonderful band too. How did you get connected with Kansas?
Okay, so it wasn't directly through Kansas. It was through a contractor who contracts backup orchestras or backup, musicians for touring groups at the Mohegan Sun. So I started playing, I don't know, they must have had a need at one point. I got a call, and then from then on, I just kept getting called. So I played for a lot of different groups. I played for Yes. I played for Kansas. I played for Josh Groban. the Three Irish Tenors, Peter Cetera, lots of different great experiences. Yeah.
Were most of them on Mohegan Sun?
Most of them were Mohegan Sun, some were at Foxwoods,
Okay.
and there were a couple things at the Bushnell, like Deep Purple, believe it or not, did a symphonic show. It was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I did that too. So I think every time I do those things, I think, wow, I'm so lucky. Can't believe I get to do this.
I want to see your resume.
So for our listeners who aren't familiar with all of this, you know, most of us have this image of a band touring and they bring all the musicians with them, but how does this work? There's a local person that finds local musicians to back up these major acts.
Yes, it's the same also for some of the national touring Broadway shows, which I play for at the Bushnell. There will be a contractor who's responsible for finding people who can come in on the day of the show. And for the touring bands and things like that, we don't get the music ahead of time. We show up about 3:00 or something like that, and there's the music sitting on the stand, and you've got to be able to pick it up and do it. And you don't really go through the show, you just kind of touch on some things, you run through, but some things they just say, yeah, this is going to happen, blah blah blah. And then you have dinner and the show happens and you have no idea what's going to happen. But yeah, once again, it's been a blessing. It's been really great to have had the honor of being somebody that somebody trusted to do that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's a special kind of musician who can do that, because you literally have to pick up different types of music on the fly. You've done this with different types of acts. You personally, though, what's your favorite music?
That's a really tough one. I think there's so many things I love. I really love jazz. I love classical because that's kind of where I got started, but I love Latin music. The flute has an awesome spot in a lot of Latin music. My bucket list is to play in a Latin band.
Nice.
I would love to do that.
Well, you're involved with the Glastonbury Chamber. Maybe there's a networking opportunity to open some doors there.
Yeah, I'll have to try that this week.
We had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, is a good friend of ours named Stephen King Jr., and he is a member of Soul Sound Review, which is a soul band that's just amazing. And they play all over the place. And obviously, you know, the Music Connections, if you throw that out there, you never know, because there's all kinds of diversity around here as far as bands and things like that goes. So if you're listening out there, Kim's available to be there.
Thank you, Chip.
Okay, there you go.
So, yeah, okay. So speaking of the Connecticut River Valley Chamber, you recently, almost a year ago, I believe, if not more, joined as their membership director. How does that transition happen?
I think it's something that happened to a lot of people during the pandemic. What had happened prior to the pandemic is I had started a role on staff at the Springfield Symphony, where I was also performing. So I was helping with the events in the role of music librarian. So I would work on, I was a liaison to guest artists and things like that, and the guest conductors, and make sure that everything was together, and kind of a customer service position for the musicians of the orchestra. And during the pandemic, the orchestra kind of ceased to exist, and so did my day position. on staff there. And I was furloughed for quite some time. It didn't look like there was anything resolving with that. So I started looking for something else to do. And it was pretty easy segue to bring those skills into a different application.
Yeah, we've spoken with a couple of musicians about what happened during COVID. What was your experience like? I mean, did you try to do virtual as some did? Was it just complete shutdown? What was your experience?
Yeah, it was tough. I think it was tough for everybody. I think I started out like, yay, okay, we get some time off and this will be fun. And I'm really motivated. I'm going to work on all this stuff and I'm going to get so much better. And I'm going to practice every day. And I started making collaborations virtually with some of my friends. And you can see some of those on my website. And I think there's a bunch on my Facebook too. They were so much fun. We started this little orchestra. We called it the TV Land Orchestra. And we did TV themes. So we did green. The first thing we did, I think, was Sanford and Son. And then we did Green Acres, and we did the A-Team. We did, I don't remember. There were a whole bunch of them. So, and we were having a blast, and it was really great. But pretty soon, everybody was doing that. And it got boring watching them because every single musician out there was making one. And we got tired of it too. And it just grew old, and you really wanted to be with people again. It was really hard to do that. It was fun, but it was hard to do it virtually because
I imagine it was the same thing for lessons too, because obviously you're a teacher also, and obviously all that had to go to Zoom also.
Yeah. Before the pandemic, I had already been teaching virtually, but it wasn't to the extent that I taught virtually after the pandemic started. And I think that was very draining.
Yeah. No.
It's still good to see everybody and to have that relationship the best way that you can. But I found that we all were really missing being together. There's an energy that you can't have over Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, my son who plays in the band, I mean, he teaches music lessons during the day, and that had to all go to Zoom. And he teaches several different things, and obviously, it's really, really tough to compare sounds and everything else when you're using this format as opposed to getting together one-to-one. So, I mean, obviously, he's happy to be getting back together with people, but obviously, you had to deal. And the Zoom stuff's not going away, so a combination of having both things obviously opens more doors for you.
Yeah. I think like with a lot of businesses as well, there was a pivot that was mandatory during the pandemic, and people started doing things that they never imagined that they would do that they're going to keep doing, right? So it was a good thing in that way too. If you really want to put a positive spin on it, there's the positivity right there.
Yeah, there were some things that came out of the pandemic. Certainly remote working, video conferencing that we had been moving towards for a long time, but there was a resistance to. And then when you didn't have a choice, people started doing it. It's like, oh, well, why were we so resistant to this?
Yeah, I mean, in that way, it was really fruitful, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they said in a lot of ways that pushed communications and logistics and so on and so forth ahead by several years, to where a lot of people thought we weren't going to be doing a lot of this stuff until like 2030. But because we had to, we're doing it now. And there's so many benefits to being able to do things both ways, especially depending on what type of business you're in. Because again, for many, many people, it's opened up the whole world as their stage, pun intended.
Yes. I was just talking with a prospective member for the chamber who mentioned the same thing. They had started their business right before the pandemic, and then all of a sudden they had to jump to like their 2-year or 3-year or 5-year plan of being more virtual, and their business just jumped to that model. And it actually was really good for them going forward, but it was kind of scary at first.
So we mentioned that you were teaching virtually. You taught before the pandemic. How long have you been teaching?
I have been teaching. My first little student probably walked through the doors when I was in maybe 8th or 9th grade. My mom was kind of spreading the word around the community that I was available. $5 a lesson. So, and I have to admit, I wasn't a very good teacher back then. I didn't really intend to be a teacher. I intended to be a performer. And I had another little student when I was in college, and she was amazing. And I guess the director of the community division at the Hart School, where I went to school, heard her, and they were kind of trying to recruit me to teach there. And I did it. I started to do it just because it was a job and it was for the money. I was still in school when I got hired to teach there. And that first year was rough, man. But I started to realize that anything that somebody wasn't learning, I had responsibility for. And it wasn't like, what's wrong with these guys? It's how can I do a better job? So it was a tremendous growth opportunity for me. And I grew to be a really good teacher and to really love it.
Yeah, and it's also an advantage that you were teaching while you were still in school, because there is no better way to solidify your own learning than to teach it to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when I was out of school, I've always maintained that I'd love to keep a studio going because it encourages me to be better. And I become a better player when I'm helping other people become better players.
Yeah. So I think the theme of your career is just unintended consequences, because you've gone from one thing to just taking advantage of opportunities as they showed up.
You know, I guess that's true. I really never thought of it that way, but when you say it that way, I realized, wow, that's really what has happened. And I'm kind of proud of myself when I think of it that way, because I've managed to pivot so often.
Well, you've managed to pivot, but also you were able to see these opportunities and you didn't shy away from them. That's, we've spoken to so many people who they'll look back and go, yeah, could have done this, but really didn't think it was for me, or didn't want to get out of my comfort zone. You just jumped in.
No, you know what? I guess you're right, but I don't think it felt that way to me. Inside my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm not, but I think it's the performer in me. Sometimes you're thinking it's an oh my God moment, and you just have to just do it. And so I freak out and then I do it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's part of who you are, and you know that you're talented, and every performance that you do, every student that you teach, and so on and so forth, just adds fuel to the fire. So you've had momentum going for yourself for a long, 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 long time, and that just attracts other opportunities, obviously.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I was listening to one of your previous podcasts about the law of attraction. And I've always maintained that, like, somehow, like, if I put something out there, it sort of happens. And that's been something I've always said when I get the itch for something else.
Yep.
Because I get itchy. I'm a very itchy person. Like, I have to change things up often. When I get the itch, if you kind of put it out there in a positive way, it kind of happens.
Yeah. Thoughts become things.
Yeah.
Principle.
And so far today, we've put out into the universe that you want to play with a Latin band, you want to open a studio. So we'll see when these things will happen. Yeah.
We'll see.
So obviously, now that the pandemic is sort of winding down, you've gotten back into performing. What's coming up performance-wise?
Well, something for you to know, which I don't even think you knew, Eric, even though we've seen each other a lot this year. I did start playing in the fall, and 2 months in, I had an injury that caused me to have to stop, and I've had a frozen shoulder I think I was out for 6 months. And I just started 3 or 4 weeks ago. I just started being able to play again. And fortunately, the season is mostly over, but I'm back. And I was just with the New Haven Symphony this past week. I had the Waterbury Symphony, did the Springfield Symphony, and I'm going to be playing on the Green in New Haven second weekend in June, I think.
Nice. So actually, come to think of it, I think somebody did mention the frozen shoulder to me. I'll be honest, I do not know what that means. So why don't you tell us what a frozen shoulder is?
It's just a mysterious thing that happens to people. Sometimes it's related to an injury, sometimes it's not. Where your shoulder, it's called adhesive capsulitis, where there are adhesions in the shoulder capsule, and it stops the shoulder from being able to have full range of motion. Sometimes people have a tear or something that causes it, but my arm couldn't even get up into the position to hold the flute. My right arm. Yep.
Well, obviously, since you performed this past weekend, you're recovered at least to a certain extent.
Yep. I can't get my arm behind my back yet, but I can play the flute. So I'm another really great opportunity for gratitude, because I didn't realize how much I missed it until I was back doing it again.
Well, it's good that you're back doing it. And we are just about out of time. So if somebody wants to see you perform, you just said you'll be in New Haven in June. What's the dates on that?
I think it's the 11th. With the New Haven Symphony, we'll be on the Green. Whatever that Saturday is in June, that's I think the next thing.
All right. And if somebody wants to get more information about the Connecticut River Valley Chamber, how can they do that?
Oh, that's easy. But you can just Google it if you want, but you can go to the website, www.crvchamber.org, or they can email me, kim@crvchamber.org.
Great. We are so glad you could spend this time with us. And Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway this week?
I just love the story. You found out your talents. You found out things that you love to do. We talked a lot about personal strategic planning, working on the person in the mirror. And it's really nothing more than writing down likes, interests, things that you're good at, and so on and so forth, finding your passion and purpose and just going out and doing it. And the more that you do, just like you are Exhibit A, the more opportunities that you have. And, as the shirt here says, life is good. So congratulations. It's so wonderful to hear your story.
Thank you very much. It was really wonderful to share it with you.
Yeah, I think for me, the big takeaway is take advantage of opportunities when they occur. That's, you can learn more about yourself, learn more about those opportunities, and you never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah, I agreed. You never know. You don't know until you try.
That's it. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.